All right. Vasily Lomachenko sounded a little bit worried about Luke Campbell. And I think he might be right. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. Vasily Lomachenko a little bit worried about Luke Campbell, and he's right to be so. Before we get into that though, I want to welcome you back to the channel, subscribers. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe and hit the bell icon. Also, definitely tune into the live streams. We got some prizes we're gonna give away to subscribers and Patreons, members of the Patreon. Definitely check out the Patreon. Thank you to everybody that supports in the live streams in the Cash App and in the Super Chats. Thank you guys so much for all your support. Now let's get into this. We know that there is a fight coming up between Vasily Lomachenko and a boxer named Luke Campbell. They will be fighting. Let me pull out the date. They'll be fighting in London, and it's not too far away. It's I believe it's August 31st is the date for the fight. And Luke Campbell is an Olympic gold medalist. We know who Vasily Lomachenko is, obviously, but Vasily Lomachenko is a two-time Olympic gold medalist. He is by many people consider him up in the top pound for pound fighters in the world. I personally have him in my top 5, but being in the top 5 pound for pound list, man, that's a huge compliment. It doesn't mean just because you think somebody might be better than him, that's not trashing the guy at all. However, the guy's a great fighter, and he is fighting another gold medalist in Luke Campbell. Luke Campbell is a guy that fought. They have a common opponent. I do believe that's Jorge Linares. Luke Campbell wound up losing to Jorge Linares in a decision, but it was it was a good fight. Luke Campbell was very competitive in that fight. The kid is he's pretty strong. He seems like, despite what he kind of looks like, he's a little tougher. I think he's tougher than people would think that he is. This guy's alive. This guy's a live dog. Luke Campbell is not a Rocky Fielding type of fighter. This is a legitimately skilled fighter, Luke Campbell. And there's several reasons why I think that Lomachenko should be worried, but let's go over just real quick and say what he has to say about him. He says he is tall, he has a big reach, he's a smart boxer, he has a high boxing IQ, he also has lots of amateur experience, so maybe for me it will be a big challenge. I never think about being unbeatable. I just do my job and train hard, and when I come to the ring, I believe that I can win. Look, first of all, and I got to repeat this often, Vasily Lomachenko ain't unbeatable. He's not unbeatable because he's been beaten. 2 reasons. 1, he's been beaten. And 2nd, he's a human being. And he's a human being who is getting older and having harder times at 135 pounds than he had at 130. Now and I believe that Vasily Lomachenko's weight class is lightweight. I don't believe that it's 130. I definitely don't believe it's at 126. At 126, he was noticeably bigger than everybody he fought. At 130, he was noticeably bigger than everybody he fought. And at 135, now he's getting in there with some of the taller guys that are his size as far as their muscular size, but several of them are being taller. He wound up going the distance with Jose Pedraza, although, man, I loved his plan B with that body shot on Jose Pedraza that dropped him. He won the fight. He's won all his lightweight fights, handily. I don't think he was in any risk of losing. He got knocked down by Jorge Linares. He winds up stopping Jorge Linares with a body shot. But I think Father Time is coming for Vasily Lomachenko. There's also a bigger worry that I have for Vasily Lomachenko with this fight being in the UK. And obviously fighting an Eddie Hearn fighter. After what we saw with Dillian White versus Oscar Rivas and UCAD. Now, there's nothing that I've seen in Luke Campbell that would make me believe this Luke Campbell would take D-ball and all of that nonsense. And clearly, Bob Arum is a very, very experienced promoter who's going to have his eyes on everything that's going on with, with Luke Campbell and Vasily Lomachenko. But you can't just forget about that, or you can't. I just can't forget about the fact that the last Matchroom card that I watched, fight that I watched, which was Dillian Whyte versus Oscar Rivas. Dillian Whyte tested positive for D-ball before the fight, and he was allowed to fight, and the other fighter wasn't notified. And the only reason that anybody knew about it was because it was leaked to Thomas Hauser, and Thomas Hauser wrote an article about it on Boxing Scene. We still don't have any type of B sample for Dillian Whyte because because they are going to fight not to test it at all. Shout out to Rorinoro Zorro. They're going to push not to test it at all because the panel, the UCAD panel, passed them. Let them go. Let them slide off. That's UK anti-doping. Once, according to the protocols of the UK anti-doping agency, I think it's agency, that you can test positive for something. You can make a presentation to a panel. If the panel thinks that they take your explanation and say that's okay, then you get to go ahead. You're cleared to fight, and you don't have to have your B sample tested because you are cleared to fight. The only reason they would look for your B sample is if they didn't believe the story that you gave them, and as a result, they notified all interested parties, and your fight was canceled, and then you test your B sample so that you can then be cleared. It's in the words of Bob Arum, it was obscene what they pulled off. So, and again, there's two things that were most significant. Dillian Whyte tested positive, right? All he had to do was give testimony and explain why D-ball, which is testosterone, was in his system, and they let him fight without ever looking at the B sample and testing it to see if their tests were in error. Were in error. There was something wrong with the test, and they didn't inform the other fighter, and they didn't inform the public. And if it wasn't notified, and if we didn't get that from Thomas Hauser, we would have never ever known. That's crazy. So when you have Vasily Lomachenko going in there with Luke Campbell, and by the way, look at the pictures of Luke Campbell. Luke Campbell's a lot bigger than Vasily Lomachenko. I think he's more rugged a fighter than both Pedraza, and more rugged than Pedraza and Jorge Linares. Jorge Linares had already been knocked out 2 times at lower weight classes before he got knocked out by Vasily Lomachenko. And he's been knocked out since he fought Vasily Lomachenko. Same thing, Jorge Pedraza didn't get knocked out by Lomachenko, but he had got beaten up real bad by Gervonta Davis. I do believe that Luke Campbell has a loss earlier in his career, but I think that this guy could probably be somebody who I think he started at 135. Don't quote me on that, but I think he looks like a big 135, a strong 135, and a guy that could eventually fight at 140. But also in the UK with Eddie Hearn and Matchroom, they are running real low on champions and prospects for champions. They had Anthony Joshua, lost all that. They did have Daniel Jacobs. Daniel Jacobs lost. And that's in the United States. You had that little guy, that whatever the name of the little guy is, that Nonito Donaire beat. But if you look at the way these Matchroom fights have been judged over there in the UK, not only do they have the drug testing issues, they also have the scoring of fights and the way that the referees have been handling fights over there for Matchroom. How they basically prevented Joseph Parker from even laying a hand on the inside on Anthony Joshua. How they allow during the last round of Oscar Rivas versus Dillian White, how they gave Dillian White all that time to basically gave him a timeout. How Anthony Joshua took his own timeout when his hand wrap came undone. It's just a lot. It's a lot of shady stuff going on over there, man. A lot of shady stuff going on over there. Combine the size and the skills of Luke Campbell, the age, and I believe the slightly diminished stature, status of Lomachenko, just because he's getting older. His eyes are getting more wear and tear on his eyes. His tissues looking, man, this is a recipe. This is a recipe for an upset. I'm not predicting an upset, but it's a recipe for an upset. Let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.